Right, the last on the skill build list, for no particular reason whatsoever. Of course, we are looking at Oxys, and I'm going to be going over what is generally considered to be the best setup, as well as a few variations you're able to sort of slip into this. Now, before we get started, it has come to my attention that there has been a lot of misinformation on DTA and DTOC when they are being applied to skills. As such, I've put it in a community post, I'm going to put it in this video as well. This, courtesy of Hutchler, is what DTA affects skill-wise, as well as some statuses, and we could argue what DTOC also applies to, but it's just Oxidizer. So hopefully that clears that up. Now the top tier Oxidizer build is as follows. We have 3-piece Empress, 1 Wyvern, typically the backpack, Contractors and Foxes, the unicorn pieces. Now you might notice that I don't have any mods in, and that's simply just because depending on the situation you might want to go with skill haste mods or you might want to go with skill duration mods. It is going to be dependent on your situation. And we typically run Technician here. 1, extra 10% skill damage. 2, it gives us the Artificer Hive. However, this doesn't mean that you should shy away from already being at skill tier 6, simply just because in some group setups, you will need to swap to something like Demolitionist to give your team another 5% DTOC, because they will have other priorities. So, you can go for a blue core, although this isn't going to help you, just because, quite simply, Glass Cannon is essentially a must. For a lot of other skill builds, you can work around this. However, for Oxidizer, if you're not running Glass Cannon, I will outright say you are doing it wrong. The reason we go for a Wyvern backpack, as you just saw, I swap my backpack to a Costa's if needed. It's not generally a really overall required thing, however it can be useful. And we also take with us BTSU gloves, typically because we're able to overcharge by detonating a hive. Now what this hive will potentially be, if you are not running Technician for the Artificer, is mostly going to be up to you. However, in some situations, you can also use a Stinger Hive. Now, in terms of weapons, there are a few good choices. Typically, we go for a shotgun, simply because shotguns have both DTA and DTOC on them within sync. We can also use Capacitor. Capacitor does give us more damage at maximum stacks, but it takes longer to build up. Typically, when firing Oxys, depending on the range that we're wanting to use, we either go with Chatterbox just to fire them off as quickly as possible, or Glory Days because that stability does transfer across to the actual chem launcher. I've covered this all in a previous video here, which I will link in the description below just in case you want to get some extra tips and tricks. This is just predominantly about the build. Ideally, tech support is the best in slot backpack talent, simply because the idea of Oxys is kind of fire and forget. Other than that, that is generally it. It's a pretty short video just because there's really one build and you just swap out the backpack for Acostas or the gloves for BTSU. That is essentially it. One thing I will state, Oxys are primarily, you can play solo, you can, but they are primarily a group build, mostly organised groups as well. Playing Oxy in randoms is a very good way to get yourself killed, but you can do it as well as, again, you can do it in solo, but I just don't recommend it. It's typically a group setup where someone is going to be completely dominating an entire spawn before they even open up a door, because that's what Oxys do. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.